Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel from Evelyn and Peter, and today I have the Daisy Daydream Cardigan to share with you guys. You might know my Daisy Day Throw, my Daisy Day Tote, and my Daisy Day Cardigan, and now I have the Daisy Daydream Cardigan. So you can find the free pattern on my blog, EvelynAndPeter.com, in sizes extra small through 5X. I recommend having that written pattern pulled up as you follow along with the video tutorial. So I'll have that linked in the description for you guys. It is available as a kit with Lion Brand. The kit comes with all the yarn you need to make your cardigan, plus a free copy of the printable PDF pattern download. You can also swap out your yarn colors if you want as well. It's on Etsy and in my Ravelry shop as well. So I linked everything for you guys. If you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, I recommend doing that. You guys will be the first to know whenever I have a new pattern or tutorial coming out, or if I have any really good sales on my patterns or kits. I let you guys know that as well. So everything will be linked for you. Now a little bit about the pattern. I use Lion Brand's Feels Like a Dream yarn. This is a very fuzzy, soft, and amazing yarn. I do recommend that you are at least an intermediate to advanced crocheter if you are attempting to make this cardigan with that particular yarn. Now the yarn really does make the pattern. I highly recommend getting it, but I also recommend that you have already worked with fuzzy yarn before. So it is very fuzzy and fluffy, as you can see, so it can be difficult to see your stitches as you go. You will be feeling your stitches. You will be trusting your hook and your knowledge of where the stitches are to be able to work those stitches, and then you will be utilizing stitch markers as well in this pattern. So it's not a pattern to just fly through and not have to put any thought into it because of the color work on the back. I do recommend that you take it slow on the back panel while you're working up the graph with the daisies, that you use your stitch markers to make sure you stay on track. The stitch markers really do help, especially on that back panel. Once you get through the back panel and you complete the color work, then the rest is just easy breezy. You'll be used to working with the yarn after you get through the back panel, and the rest of the panels are just solid color, and all of the stitches are also single crochet. So the only thing you have to worry about is being able to keep your stitch count right on the back panel. That's why we use the stitch markers. That's why we take it slow. That's why we make sure we're counting as we go within the graph area on the back. So I do recommend that you have some experience with fuzzy or fluffy yarn. Now if you've already worked with it before, then it should be very simple for you to do. I promise you that the very beginning is the most difficult part. If you are more new and you're attempting this with the yarn, the hardest part is the initial setup of the panel, in my experience with it. So once you get that foundation row complete, I do recommend doing a foundation row. For me, it was easier to keep track and to count the stitches, but once you get that first row set up and you know you have the right amount of stitches that you have, then it is a lot easier to continue on and just move your stitch markers up with you for each of the rows that come after. So just take it very slow when you're initially setting up your foundation row. Take it slow while you're working the back panel with the graph, and just trust where you're feeling the stitches. And then this is also very forgiving yarn. If you make a mistake on the sleeve and you're missing a stitch, it's not really going to matter. We're not doing any crazy shaping. We are not doing anything where your stitch count is absolutely going to have to be exactly the correct, except for the back panel with the graph. But other than that, if you notice that you missed a stitch, you can easily sneak in another stitch in the following row to get back on track with the other panels. So I do highly recommend this yarn. I loved using it. It's just definitely more of an advanced yarn to use. But I hope you guys like this pattern. I had so much fun making it, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video tutorial. So for this design, you are going to need bulky weight yarn. I'm using Feels Like a Dream by Lion Brand. If you want your cardigan to have that fuzzy texture like mine, you're going to want to use the same yarn or something similar with the fuzzy texture that it has. So I highly recommend checking out the kit to get this exact yarn. It's a bulky weight and you need it in 3 different colors. I'm using Sea Spray as my main color, and then Sunflower for the center of the flowers, and then Snowflake for the petals of the flowers. So all of the exact yardage that you need for all of the sizes is available on my blog. This cardigan can also be worked up in different bulky weight yarns as well. You just won't have the same type of texture. We're going to be using a J 6mm crochet hook, a ton of stitch markers. Make sure you have stitch markers available, and then scissors and a needle to weave in your ends, as well as a measuring tape. So we're going to be starting on the back panel of the cardigan. So go ahead and grab color A. This is the Sea Spray color. This is the main color of your cardigan that you'll be using. And we're just gonna start off with a slip knot. So you can go ahead and grab that yarn, wrap it around your fingers to create the slip knot, insert your hook, and then pull that yarn through. So we're going to be starting with a foundation single crochet row. I found that with this fuzzy yarn, it is much easier to work up this initial row in foundation stitches compared to working a chain and then single crocheting back down. You can do that, and for that you would just chain one more than the number listed for your size in the written pattern, and then work one single crochet in the second chain from the hook and back across. But I am going to be doing a foundation single crochet, so for that you're going to just chain 2, and then you're going to insert your hook into the back bump of that first chain that you made. So it's obviously very difficult to see your stitches at this point, and if you put your hook in the wrong spot by accident, it's really not going to mess you up. I would try not to stress about that. So you can stick it through the loop. Just try and make sure it's in that first chain. And then you can kind of see the thin string where the yarn is, and then a bunch of fuzzies on it. So then you're just going to yarn over, pull up a loop. So you have 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through the first loop only. And now I like to take my fingers and kind of just pinch right where I did that yarn over and pull through the first loop. So that little chain that's in there, I like to kind of just hold it with my fingers so I know the placement of it for this next part. So yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on your hook. So that is one foundation single crochet. And now where our fingers are pinched is where you're going to stick your hook in. So it's just into the bottom of the previous stitch that we just made, and you're going to try and get it through both of those loops. So you'll want to see that you have 2 separate loops on where you're sticking your hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop only. I like to pinch that little chain there with my fingers just to help me with the placement in the next stitch. Yarn over and pull through 2 to complete your next foundation single crochet. Now you can kind of put your hook right where your fingers were pinching that chain, and you stick your hook through both of those loops, and then yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop only. Again, you can pinch that little part, yarn over, pull through 2, and then you'll just continue on with that for the foundation row. So move your fingers, stick your hook in the bottom of that previous stitch, try and get it through both of those loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2. Try and make sure that you're not having too loose of a tension. Obviously you don't want it too tight where you can't put your hook in, but try and keep it controlled as you go. And the first row is the hardest part of this yarn. I know it might not seem like it, but this is the most difficult part, is getting this initial first row established. You might need to pull it out and restart a couple of times. Take your time with it and just try and keep your tension even and hold on to that point where you know you need to stick your hook in for the next stitch. So go slow, take your time with this, and we're going to be placing stitch markers to help us keep on track and keep our stitch count correct. So we're going to be placing a stitch marker in every 10th stitch. So I have 9 stitches made right now, and this is going to be my 10th stitch. So I'm just going to remove my hook, place that stitch marker into the loop where my hook just was. And this is going to be the top of the 10th stitch. So once I make this next stitch here, that will be in the top of it, which is the 10th stitch. So put your hook back under the loop, work your foundation single crochet. This is our 10th stitch complete now, and our stitch marker is marking that off. Now we know that we have 10 stitches here, and we don't have to continue to count and stress out in our brains. We have our stitch marker placed in that 10th one, and we're just going to continue this same process until we have the correct stitch count. And that stitch count will be different depending on what size you're making, so each one will look different, but you just want to make sure that you place them in that 10th stitch. So once you make that 9th stitch, you remove your hook, put it on the loop, and work that 10th stitch. Or you can place it in whichever way you are comfortable placing it in or used to placing your stitch markers in. You can also adjust the placements of these if you want them every 5th stitch, every 7th, every 15th, whatever you are most comfortable with. It's not going to matter. You can choose where you want those placed. Just make sure it's consistent throughout the panel. Okay, so I just made my 19th stitch, and now I'm going to show you guys one more time how to place in that stitch marker. So I'm just going to put it on the current loop that's on my hook, close it, and now work my 20th stitch. So just doing the same thing, working my foundation stitch, and now once we've completed this one, the stitch marker is in the top of that 20th stitch. So go ahead and continue working your way across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1. Okay, so now I am done with row 1 of my back panel. You can see I have all of my stitch markers placed in the 10th stitch all the way across. I'm making the size small for mine, and each size is going to have a different amount left over at the end. So I have a stitch marker here in my 80th stitch, but then I also have one more stitch that is after that one to make for the 81st stitch of the row. So some of the sizes might have 3 after your last stitch marker, some might have 6 after it. It just depends on your size, but you will have a different amount after that last stitch marker there. So it's not meaning that you're placing them wrong or anything like that. That's how it's supposed to be. So after you get the correct amount of stitches for the size that you're making, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. And now our stitch markers are still in place, and so we know that we have 10 stitches. When you're working your way back, you count them differently in your head. So on the way forward in row 1, when we were working and we put it in the 10th stitch, now that you're looking at the wrong side of the back panel, when you're counting in your head, you're technically counting that stitch marker as the first stitch. So I just worked my my first stitch of the row. So that was the 81st stitch from row 1, and now I'm going to move my stitch marker up, and this stitch marker is in the first of our first group of 10. So I've moved it up, and now I work my first stitch, and in my head as I'm counting, this is my first stitch of that group. So you insert your hook and just work a normal single crochet. And now you can see this stitch marker is still in the same exact stitch as it was, and that's our first stitch. This is our second. Now our third, our fourth. We're just working single crochets here. And we're just going to do single crochets throughout the entire cardigan and panel. You can slightly see the stitches. I know it's hard with this yarn. You can feel them with your fingers. Each time you feel a bump and then the little hole, you know that you have a single crochet there. And I do find that as you're working it up and getting used to it, the hook just kind of goes where it needs to go. So you can kind of see that little lump there, and then you can work your 5th stitch. and our 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and our 10th stitch. So now we worked our 10 stitches and we've reached that next stitch marker. So we have 11 stitches total. We have that 1 on the end. Depending on your size, you might have a different amount there. And then you've worked 1 through 10, 1 starting at the stitch marker through 10, reaching just before that next stitch marker. So you can just go ahead, remove your stitch marker, place it on the loop on your hook. Now it is in the correct spot, so when we work our next stitch, it's staying in the same stitch as the previous row. So insert your hook, and now this is the first stitch of our next group of 10. So here's number 1, number 2. You can see that our stitch marker is in the top of that first stitch. And you just continue on in this manner all the way across. So again, when you're looking at row 1, the right side, you work 10 stitches, placing it into the 10th stitch. But then when you're looking at the wrong side, you count them differently. In your head, it's just natural to do it that way, and you're looking at the stitch marker, it's in your first stitch through 10. So I just worked my 10th stitch there of that group of 10. So I have my 1 on my end, my 1 through 10, my 1 through 10, and now I've reached that next stitch marker. I can just move it on up and continue as normal. And again, if you have them placed in different spots, it'll be the same thing, just depending on how many stitch markers you want in your placement of them. So I know for some people, they're not used to using stitch markers working in rows. I know I'm way more used to working them in the round and bringing up that way and only facing the same side. So just make sure as you're going, you're not messing anything up with your stitch markers. Just make sure they're staying in that same stitch as you go for each row. So you can go ahead and work your way across, moving them up as you go. And I will meet you at the end of the row. Okay, so now you should be finished with row 2, and your stitch markers are still in the same exact spot. And now our next several rows, we're just going to be doing the same thing. You're just going to be working 1 single crochet in each stitch across while moving those stitch markers up with you as you go. So you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work to begin row 3. Now we are counting with our first stitch is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then our stitch marker is in the top of that 10th stitch. So once you have your 9th stitch complete right here, so I'm working my 9th, and then we just remove that stitch marker, move it to the loop on your hook for our 10th. And so you need a total of 12 rows before we move on to the color work section. So we're on our 3rd row now. Go ahead and complete this row and then work 9 more doing the exact same thing. And I will meet you when you are finished with row 12, and then I'll show you how to bring in the different colors for our daisies. Okay, so now you should have 12 rows complete. And then once you do that, go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. We're going to be starting row 13, and this is in the portion of the pattern where we've moved on to the graph section. So we're going to still be following the written pattern, but also bringing in that graph kind of as a guide to see our flowers and the color changes. Okay, so here is what our graph looks like. This is included in the written pattern. And for the back panel, each size has a different amount of stitches on either side of the graph. So you can see the graph is kind of a zoomed in version just of the daisy. So it starts at the very bottom of the first petal of the daisy and lines up on the right hand side at the edge of the daisy. That way it is clear, you guys can see better, and then each cardigan size will have a different amount of color A on either side before starting the graph. So it's in the written pattern. The numbers that are black and in parentheses are the amount of stitches that you have on either side before starting the graph for every size. And then the numbers that are highlighted in blue are the numbers that are reflected within the graph shown here. So for example, you will see that there is 12, 15, 18, 22, 25, 29, 32, 36, 39A. That is not reflected in the graph. You work those up in color A. And then 7A is the next part of the graph. That is highlighted in blue, and that's these 7 squares down here at the bottom of the graph. And then 2B, which is those 2 white squares at the bottom of the petal there. And then 42A, which is the remainder of the blue squares in the rest of the row of this graph. And then it jumps right back into the 12, 15, 18, 22, 25, 29, 32, 36, 39A. And those are not highlighted in the written pattern, and that reflects those numbers and the amount of stitches on the other side of the graph. So that's a little bit about how the graph is written. And as long as you are following along with the written pattern, that way you remember, oh, I don't start this row with just 7 stitches here. I know I have to work the amount of stitches across for my size. So for the small, you would work 15A before you start the 7A of the blue of the graph. Okay, so I've worked my 15A, and then I've also worked my 7A on the graph, and now we have to do 2B, which is the bottom of the flower petal. And instead of doing that last yarn over and pull through with color A, we're going to place color B on our hook and just pull it through with color B. So now our working yarn is color B, which is the bottom of that petal, and you'll just kind of tuck down color A and hold it off to the side while you work the 2 squares in B. So you can see our 2 squares right here, just the bottom of the petal, and then we jump right back into color A. Okay, so we're going to do our 2B, so just insert your hook into that next stitch, work a single crochet with B, and then insert into the next, work partial single crochet with B. Instead of doing our last yarn over with B, we need to pick A back up because we're switching back to color A. We're only doing 2 stitches in B, so you'll just drop B down and pick A back up, finish that last pull over with color A, and then you're just going to want to leave color B there. We're going to pick it back up in the next row. So you don't want to carry color B with you as you work your way across, just leave it where it is and jump right back into working your single crochets with color A. So that's the only color work we're doing in this row 13, just the 2B, and then jump right back in and just work all the way across in color A. So it's listed as 42A. Those are reflected on the graph. And then you'll have a number individual to your size that are not highlighted and reflected on the graph that you need to complete as well. So you're just working all the way to the end of the row. You can continue moving up those stitch markers with you as you go as well. And I find now that we have color coming in, it's easier to work up the rows when it says color B, because you can easily see those 2 white stitches. So it does help a little bit with placement and being able to see what you're doing, I think. So go ahead and work your way down and then work your way back, and I will meet you back here at the bottom of the petal in row 14. Okay, so I've worked my way down and back. Now we've reached the bottom of the petal and we're facing the wrong side of the work now. The other side is the right side for row 13, and now we need to add in 4 white stitches. So we want to add in another white stitch just before those 2, and then work 1 in the top of the 2 and then 1 after. So you're going to work your single crochet stitches, and then instead of doing that last yarn over and pull through with the color A, we're going to pick color B back up. So it's there waiting for us where we left it, and you're just ignore the tail and then pick up color B and just place it on your hook and do that next pull through of the stitch with color B. So we're going to put it on our hook and then yarn over and pull through. Now our working yarn is color B. You can give it a slight tug just to make sure it's in place. And then you're going to work your single crochet, and you know it's going to be into the top of color A still because we haven't reached those 2. So you work your first one into the top of that next stitch, and then you work 1 into the top of that first white stitch. So this is our second. and then work your third. It's going in top of that second white stitch from below, and we still need to work one more. So now we're going in top of color A. Instead of doing that last yarn over and pull through, you're going to bring the yarn and tuck it towards you on the wrong side of your work. You always want your tails to be on the wrong side. That way it's nice and pretty on the front of your work. And then you can pick color A back up, do that last yarn over and pull through with color A. So now there's a little float on the back of our work. Since we've picked it up, you can see it stretching across the back of those stitches. Make sure you're not pulling too tight so that you're scrunching your work up. You want to try and keep it nice and even tension, and don't have the floats tugging too hard. And then just make sure your tails are still tucked on the wrong side. And now you can go right back into working all of your stitches in color A. So very easy. Just, you don't always have to be looking at the graph, because the color work is all in one section. We only do one flower at a time. I did it that way purposely so that you don't have multiple skeins of yarn and balls of color going. So we work our first daisy down below, and that way you know to always just leave your yarn there, and it's easy to reference and see where you're at in the daisy, but when you see the white stitches. I still recommend bringing those stitch markers with you as you go on your back panel, just in case. If you're super experienced and you don't need them, you can totally not have them as well, but I like to have them there just as a placement since this yarn is fuzzy. Obviously, if you are working with a different type of yarn where you can see your stitches, you wouldn't need the stitch markers, but for this, in this case, I do recommend carrying them at least on the back panel. Go ahead and work your way down the row, and then turn and work your way back, and I will show you some more color work. Okay, so now we are in row 15. It is labeled differently just in this video. It's going to say 15 in the graph in the written pattern. And we have to work our normal stitches on the side, and then we need to work 3A, 2B, 1A, 4B, 1A, 2B. So we're bringing in a little bit more color work here. Because we have to start this other petal, we're gonna have to kind of float the color A, or the color B, excuse me, up over to where we are. So you can just pick up your yarn, place color B on your hook, and do that last yarn over pull through with color B. Make sure you're not pulling too tightly. We don't want our work to start folding or scrunching or doing weird things. So just make sure it's loosely laying there, but not too loose so that you don't have like this ginormous loop hanging. And once you have that on your hook, you're going to work your first single crochet of this row with color B. So you can kind of tuck the other yarn out of the way, and then just work a single crochet stitch using color B. And then we're going to work one more. We have to move up our stitch marker here. It can feel a little cumbersome and weird at this point. It's just within a few rows of the flowers where moving up the stitch markers and changing colors can be a little difficult. So just pay attention to that. So you work your 2B. Now we have yarn A back on our hook. We're going to work 1A. And because there's only one, we're just not even going to do a full single crochet with it. We're just going to drop it and then pick color B back up and place it on our hook. So yarn over and pull through. And also, depending on your size, your stitch marker will be at a different spot within the graph as well. So remember, it's the overall width of the panel, and if you place it every 10th stitch, your stitch marker might be placed differently compared to what you see on the video. So don't be stressing out about that. And then work your 4B. You can bring yarn A back over, float it across. And then we just need to make one single crochet with it. So again, do a part single crochet, drop it, pick color B back up, do that final pull through, and then work your 2B for this next petal, and then pick color A back up. And that was the color work for this row. You made it through, and now we just finish working all the way down with color A, and I will meet you back here to show you another row of color work. So just continue across, bring your stitch markers up with you as you go. Leave color B where it is, do not take it with you. We're going to pick it back up when we reach this point in the next row. Okay, now we are starting row 16. This is an easy row of color work here. We did the crazy row previously. Now we're just working white stitches all the way across, starting on either side of our stitch from the previous row. So we're doing a total of 12 B. So we're reaching our flower, and you know that we're starting our first white stitch just before the one in the previous row. So it's easy to see where you need to start it because you can see the white yarn. So work your single crochet, and then we're going to pick up our color B, and now that is our working yarn. So we're working our first white single crochet with color B in the top of a blue, in the top of color A still. So that'll be our first one. And then you just are going to work these in color B all the way till you get to the other side of the flower. So at this point, because we're doing solid white, you want to remember to float color A with you across. So place it on your hook and just work a single crochet around it. You're just going to ignore it, pretend it's not there. You just put it on your hook and work the stitch around. That's how we float it across. And you'll want to do this every few stitches, whatever you're most comfortable with. I like to do it at least every 3 to 5 stitches, just depending. So I'm going to place it on my hook and work just completely over it. That way it's coming with me as I go along. I've reached a stitch marker, so I'm just going to go ahead and move that up. And then continue with my stitches. And again, we want a total of 12 here. So I know that my last white stitch is going to be ending in the top of color A. So I'm going to do my final yarn over and pull through with color A to complete my 12th stitch. Now we're just going to leave color B there, and it's going to be waiting for us when we come back. You can work your way all the way to the end and then come back for the next row. Okay, so now we are in row 17. This is the exact same thing as the previous row, so it's going to be a very easy row as well. I'm going to show you how to bring the floats along with you when you're facing the right side of your work and the floats are on the back. So the previous row I showed you how to do it when you're facing the wrong side. Now we're facing the right side, so we want to make sure we keep all of our tails to the wrong side. I'm going to switch back over to color B. And then I'm just going to work one single crochet into each of the top of the white stitches from below. And I'm going to bring color A with me. So this is how you do it when you're facing the right side. You still just place it on your hook and work a single crochet around it. Now you could totally do this all the way across and cover your work completely. That's what you see me doing here. If you prefer to not have floats, that's always an option. And then you just have it placed on your hook with each stitch that you make. That way there's all the floats are hidden within inside your flower. But for this particular project, I found that it kind of makes that part of your work too bulky, since this is a really bulky fuzzy yarn. So I prefer to do floats. You can do it however you are used to doing it or comfortable doing it. But I did floats with mine. I also found that it helps hide the other color yarn as well. Sometimes when you're working directly over it like I am here, you can see the yarn poking through to the front of your work and it doesn't look as neat. But I wanted to show you guys that this is an option as well if you wanted to. But if you're doing floats, you would work 3 or 4 or 5 stitches and then just pick it up and crochet over it just one time and carrying it as you go. Okay, so now you can work your way down and back, and I will meet you in the next row for some more color work. Okay, so now we're on row 18. This is a wrong side row, and you can see it's another easy row, but we are decreasing by 2 of those white stitches. So you can see the first color B starts within that second stitch of the petal. So easy to figure out where you need to put it. Work with color A all the way up until you get to the flower. I'm going to do one more stitch in color A. And then I'm working into that color B from the previous row, but I need to switch to color B currently now. And we're just working 10B across. So once you have B as your working yarn, you can just work across. Don't forget to bring color A with you. We're going to make our little floats here and just work your stitches along as you normally would, bringing that second color with you so that you can pick it back up when you need it. So continue across, move your stitch markers up with you as you reach them, carry along color A, and once you work your 10B, switch back to A, work your way down and back, and I will meet you for the next row. We're going to be bringing in color C as well in the next row. Okay, so now we are starting row 19 of the graph. You can see we have 2 stitches of color C, which is the center of the flower. So we are going to work our normal stitches that don't ever change on either side of the graph, and then we're going to be doing 1A and then 6B. So I'm bringing in color B now, and I'm going to work 6 stitches with color B. And I'm just bringing along color A as I go and moving up those stitch markers as I go as well. Okay, once we do our 6B, we need to bring in color C. So I'm just going to place that on my hook and do the last pull over with color C. And now I'm just working 2 single crochet in C. We have a 2C on the graph, so there's my first one and then a second one, and then we need to switch back to color B for 6B. So I'm just going to drop color C, pick up color B, do that last pull over with that yarn, and then work my next 6 stitches with it. So it can be a lot when you're switching between multiple colors. You can't forget to pick up color A and bring it with you. So I kind of left quite a bit of stitches in between, but that's totally fine. You can definitely leave more than just a few stitches in between your floats. Just don't forget to pick it back up eventually. You can even in the next row crochet a stitch over that float and just kind of tuck it in to make it a shorter float. That's a easy trick as well to do. So once you work your 6B, we're just going to switch back to color A, and that is it for the color work of this row. Still bringing up my stitch markers with me as I work my way across, and I'm still leaving B and C where they are so that they are there when I need them. We never take them with us all the way to the end. We're always going to leave them where they currently are. Go ahead and work your way down and back in color A. Okay, so now we are in row 20. This is the widest part of our flower here before we mirror it on the other side and start getting smaller again. So this is going to be the last color work row that I show you guys, and then for the remainder of the back panel, all of these techniques that you are learning now and seeing, we're going to just continue to implement those on the next flower and then the flower after that as well. So it's all the same. The next 2 flowers just get bigger. So our next one will be medium size, and then we'll have a large flower. You will not start the next flower until you complete this one. So I have it so that as soon as you finish this flower, you'll know, okay, in the next row is when I need to start the second. So make sure you're just paying attention to that. It's on the other side of the panel. So you'll want to remember to bring in color B. But other than that, that is how you do the color work on this. I just recommend taking it slow with the color changes and with the fuzzy yarn here. Once you get through all of these flowers, you guys will be a pro at using this fuzzy yarn, and the remainder of the cardigan is so simple and easy. You just stick with one color throughout the main body of the panels, your sleeves, your front panels. Everything is just one color, no more graphs to follow along in the remainder. So it'll just seem like an easy breeze as you go. You might not even need as many stitch markers for those. So continue just slow and steady. These take a lot of concentration while you're doing the color work and graphs with this fuzzy yarn, but it is worth it in the end, you guys, because this cardigan is so soft, cozy, and amazing. So just continue on working your colors, follow the written pattern. You can look at the graph to make sure you're on track as you continue along. And then I will meet you guys at the end of the back panel and teach you how to do all the other ones as well. Real quick before that, once you have your flower complete, you can go ahead and just cut your yarn, and that way you can use the same skein over in your next flower. So we just finished that last row with the white, and so we know that we need to get ready to start our second flower. So there is the top of the petal, and now your other one is going to be on the other side of the panel over here. So just be paying attention to that. Okay, so you should have made it through the back panel. We are through the hardest part. You can go ahead and fasten off. Each size will have a different amount of rows for the back panel. So you might have more yarn A at the top there for different lengths. And now we need to work our front panel. So I already have one complete here, and I'm going to explain it. So we start row 1 exactly the same as we did with the back panel. So if you need to, you can go rewatch how to do your foundation row and place your stitch markers. I'm placing them exactly the same, just in my 10th stitch. So you can do that as well. It is a lot easier with these smaller panels, but I still recommend at least trying to have a couple stitch markers in there just in case. But you will do row 1 exactly the same. The only difference is the stitch count. So obviously your front panels aren't going to be as wide as your back panel, but here is the start of my other front panel here. So rewatch if you need to on how to do the foundation, and then go ahead and work up all of your rows, just chaining 1, turning and working a single crochet in each stitch across, moving those stitch markers up with you as you go. Make sure you're viewing the written pattern so you know how many stitches that you need. And then I will show you guys how to do the pocket panel, or I will show you guys how to do the pocket hole for the pockets. So we're going to have a total of 30 rows before we create the pocket hole opening, so you can work those 30 rows up, and then I will come back and show you how to do that hole that we need. If you are not making pockets, you can skip directly over all of these instructions and just work your entire panel in single crochet without putting in the pockets. So that's totally an option as well. So you can just work up the same amount of rows that you have on your back panel that you do for your front panel. But I am putting the pockets in, so this is the point where we need to go ahead and do that pocket hole row. So I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work, and now we're just going to be working some stitches on either side of the hole. So I'm going to be working 3 stitches for my size. You'll notice in the written instructions, it's separate instructions for the left and the right panel, because we want our pockets to be in the correct place. So it's literally the exact same, except the amount of stitches are different on either side. So I'm only going to be showing you guys 1, but make sure you're paying attention in that written pattern. It's flipped basically, because we want both of the right sides of our cardigan and front panels to be facing the right way. So I have 3 single crochet, and now what we're going to do is just create the opening for the pocket hole. So it's just a long chain. Depending on your size, you might have a different amount. Some of them have 26, 28, or 24 chains, and then you skip the same amount of stitches that you're chaining. I'm just going to leave my stitch markers where they're at, and I'll bring them up once I start the next row. But for example, I am chaining 26, and then I'm going to skip over 26 stitches and then work a single crochet into the next stitch. So I have 3 single crochet, 26 chain, skip 26, join back in, and those last 3 stitches are just single crochet. Now, just because mine has an even amount of stitches on either side for the size small, the bigger that the panels get, you'll have more stitches on one side. So for example, when you get to the end here, if you're not making a small, you might have more than 3, you'll have more than 3 single crochet. You might have 6, you might have 10. And then in the other panel, right versus left, you'll start off with 6 or 10, do your chain, skip over, and end in 3. So they're just flipped for that row. But very simple to do. That is our pocket opening there, and I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work and work my single crochet into those first few stitches of the row. Once you reach the chain space, this big old chain space here, you're just going to work your single crochet stitches around it. If you want, you can work it into the actual chain stitch. That'll keep your single crochet in place and will spread it evenly, but I just did it completely around the chain. It was easier that way since it's hard to see your stitches, so I'm just going to go completely around it. But if you want, you can go in the actual stitch instead. It really doesn't matter. Just make sure you're getting your stitch count correct. So I'm going around it just like this, and then you'll want to slow down here and count in your head how many stitches you're doing so that you know when to move up your stitch marker from before, because it's still down in that other row. So you'll want to make sure that you're counting out 1 through 10, and bringing your stitch marker up on that first stitch. So I had my first single crochet is where that stitch marker is, and I've just worked my 10th stitch. Now I need to move up my stitch marker to the current loop that's on my hook. So now when we work our next single crochet, that'll mark off the first single crochet of the next group of 10. So go ahead and just work your stitches across, working the amount you need for your size into that chain space or the chain stitches. And then when you reach the other side of the pocket opening, just work 1 single crochet into each of those remaining stitches across. Okay, so once you get to the end of the row, your stitch count should be as it was originally, and it's not going to change throughout the remainder of the front panel. Now that we have all of those placed back in where they need to be in the chain space, now you can just work 1 single crochet into each stitch across, and that's what you're going to do for the remainder of the panel. That's our pocket opening, and now you just have to work your single crochet stitches. So I would just continue moving your stitch markers up with you, and just repeat the same thing over and over. You should have the finish with the same amount of rows that you have on the back panel. Again, the left and right panel are different, so just make sure you're paying attention to that. The only one it's the same for is the size small, because we have the same amount of stitches on either side of our pocket hole opening, but that's not the case for the other sizes. Some might have 6 on one side and 3 on the other, so you just need to make sure you remember to swap those so that it's opposite for one panel versus the other. So just follow along with that written panel, and then go ahead and make a second one. You'll have a left and a right, so you need to go make your second front panel and leave a tail long enough to sew that last row to your back panel later on. Once you have your front panels made, we need to make our sleeves. So the sleeves start off the exact same way as both the back and the front panels. Work your foundation row, and then you're just going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across, chain 1 and turn until you have the correct amount of rows that you need for your size. And then we just have a couple of decrease rows to finish off the cuff of the sleeve. So go find the amount of stitches you need for your size and work the amount of rows that you need for your size. And now I will show you how to do the decrease section of our sleeves. So super simple. We are just going to be single crochet 2 together across the entire row. So you're going to insert your hook in the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert into the next, yarn over and pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, and you just decreased. Again, do it in the next, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. So you should have experience doing this from the past. If you're making this sweater, I assume you know how to do single crochet 2 together, just a very simple decrease. The most difficult part about it is just making sure you can see your stitches, but even then, it's really not just don't freak out if your stitch count is off by 1 or 2. It's not going to matter in the long run here for the cuff. So if you see like, oh my gosh, why do I have 1 or 2 less stitches than what I should? It's not going to make a big difference here if you're accidentally putting your hook in the wrong spot while you decrease. Don't overthink it. Just decrease all the way to the end. Once you get to the end of the row and you finished your last decrease, you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work, and then we're going to do that same thing all over again to give us more of a tighter cuff. So just chain 1 and turn, and then we're going to start off with the same thing. Insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. So you're just feeling your stitches as you go. You can slightly see them, and we're just decreasing all the way across. So some of the stitches or some of the sizes might end with 1 single crochet into the remaining stitch, or you were able to decrease all the way to the end without doing that. Just depends on what size you were making and what your stitch count was. So for mine, I finished with 1 single crochet into that last stitch. Might be different depending on what size you're making again. And then just go ahead and fasten off. You'll want to leave a tail long enough to seam at least from the cuff up to the underarm of your sweater. I left mine long enough to seam from the cuff to the underarm, and then from the underarm down the side to my bottom hem. So just however you would like to do it. When you do it that way, you have less ends to weave in. So now that you have this one done, you need to go back and remake it all over again for a second sleeve. Once you have your sleeves done, you need to make 2 pocket panel inserts. I'm using color B, and then I'm just going to work up 2 squares. If you need to go and rewatch again how to work a foundation row, you can. Just work the amount of stitches for your size and then the amount of rows for your size as well. Make sure you make 2 of those. You'll want to leave a tail long enough to sew the top of it as well as one of the sides of your pocket panels to the inside of your cardigan. And then we'll also be crocheting the bottom of the pocket panel together, and then you'll have to seam up one other side as well. But once you have all of your panels complete, now we can start all of the seaming. I have my back panel here right side up, and then I'm going to place my front panels right side down. If you're not making the size small, it's easy to tell which is the right side versus the wrong side on the front panels because your the sides with the 3 single crochet on the outside of the pocket holes should be in the center of your cardigan. So you'll want with the most stitches to be on the outside towards the side hems. So once you have it all placed, you can just go ahead and seam across using that tail of yarn from the front panel, and then just go ahead and seam it to the back panel. You can obviously remove your stitch markers at this point, and you can use whichever seaming method you prefer. It does not matter. You can use your crochet hook and crochet across. You can use a mattress stitch. You can use the invisible seaming method. You can do whatever you normally do when you are joining your panels together. And then of course you need to do it on the other side as well. So once you have this first panel seamed on, go ahead and repeat that on the second front panel. Once you have your front panels sewn to your back panel, we're going to start sewing our sleeves on. So I just have my cardigan laying here, the wrong sides are facing up, and I have a stitch marker holding in place the center of the top of the sleeve. It's joined and even with the shoulder seam that I just did. So you just want to try and make it as even as possible, and making sure that you have the same amount of sleeve on either side of the seam at the shoulder. That way your sleeve is sewn on nice and even. So you can see it's just lined up with the shoulder seam. You can count your rows down. I like to count in multiples of 2 for this because you can see the ridges for the row counts, and then just place your stitch marker on either side of the sleeve panel just to hold everything in place. So just make sure you have the same amount of rows on either side, and then you're going to do the same method. I was silly and forgot to leave a long starting tail on my sleeve panel, so I have to bring in a new piece of yarn. But if you left a long tail, which I have written in the written video, you can just seam across to join and then do that on the other side using your needle, same method that you did at the shoulders. Once you have your sleeves sewn on, we are going to just join in the cuff to the underarm and the underarm down to the hem. So if you can use your tail of yarn that you left at the cuff of your sleeve and just sew up, joining that sleeve together. And then if you have enough left over, you can just keep going and continue sewing down. If not, just bring in a new piece of yarn and then of course repeat it on the other side as well. Once you have your cardigan seamed together, we need to join in the pocket panels. So I have my 2 pocket panels here, and we need to pin them in place, and then we will be sewing the top row of our pocket panel as well as one of the sides of the pocket panel. Don't worry about sewing the bottom row of your pocket panel. We're going to single crochet the front and the pocket panel together later on with the trim and edging of our cardigan. So just work your way across the top row first. I recommend sewing the top, and then you can keep going and sew down the side that's on the inner side of the cardigan here. We'll crochet the bottom, and then you'll have to bring another tail in and sew up that other side as well. So we're going to start off with the top. You'll want to align the top of your pocket panel with that bottom row here, right where the chain is from when we made the pocket hole. So that long chain, those stitches that are crocheted over it, is what we're going to be sewing the top of our pocket into. And then again, you can use whatever method that you want, however you normally sew your stuff, whatever is most comfortable for you. Any method that you want to join these in is perfectly fine. Now, I don't have my stitch markers shown here, but I recommend using them just to keep everything in place, so that you're not making any wobbly or uneven seams as you go. And then another important thing is to make sure when you're putting your needle through the front panel that you're not poking it all the way through out the other side. You just want to carefully pick up the inner part of the stitch. Obviously our cardigan is still wrong side out right now. It's right sides facing, wrong side out, so that our pocket panels are going on the inside of our cardigan. So just make sure that you're not sticking your needle through. You don't want to see the white seam on the other side of it. So it can be kind of hard because the yarn's fuzzy. You just gotta catch that string, and then just pull through, making sure it's not poking to the front. I like to use my hand just to make sure that it's not sticking out the other side. So go ahead and sew along the top of the panel and then down that first side. And then as well as the second side. You don't have to seam along the bottom. We can crochet those together later on. And then you'll want to do the same thing on the other side as well. So I have both my pockets sewn in. You can see the cute little white yarn peeking through the pocket opening, which I just love. And then we now have to crochet the edging and border of the cardigan as well as crochet along the bottom. So we have our cardigan right side facing out now, and we're just going to take a new piece of yarn, yarn A, and join in to the corner of that first front panel with a slip stitch. So we're just inserting our hook into the edge, slip stitching to join, and then you can just chain 1, and then we're going to work single crochet stitches evenly up the side of our cardigan. So at this point, your stitch count is not crucial for this, so don't even bother counting them or wondering how many you have. Just place your hook where it naturally goes and work about 1 single crochet for each single crochet row. So obviously I know it's hard to see the rows and what you're doing, so just evenly space them as you work your way up. You'll know you have too many stitches if it starts to get wavy and weird. You'll know you'll have too little if it starts to pull taut and kind of scrunch up. So you just want to single crochet evenly up the side, 1 single crochet in each stitch along the back neckline and down the other side. So we're at the other front panel corner right now, and I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work. And now we're just going to work our way back across, working 1 single crochet into each of those single crochet stitches that we just made. Again, that stitch count for the previous row is not crucial, so it doesn't matter. Now for this row, you're just going to work 1 single crochet into each of them. This row will be a little bit easier because now you have an actual stitch to work into instead of just the edges of the rows. So again, if you find that your border starts to get wavy or weird, you have too many stitches, you can pull back and decrease some. You can pull all the way back out those 2 rows and restart. and then you're just going to chain 1 and turn and single crochet back down again. So we have 3 edging rows here. Now you should be back where you joined in, and we're just going to single crochet along the bottom as well. So once you get to the bottom corner, at this point you can either chain 1 and work a single crochet into the end row. So those 3 rows that we just did, work a single crochet in each of them, or you can just continue around and work 3 single crochet into that same corner to help kind of turn the corner of the cardigan. So either method is fine, whichever one that looks best to you. You just want to make sure you're not pulling your stitches and having it be weird and too tight. You want to make sure you either increase and have 3 in the corner, or do a chain 1 and then work a single crochet into the end of those rows. Once you reach where your pocket panel starts, you're going to want to crochet through both the front panel and the pocket panel so that we can sew it shut. Now again, it's not crucial here to have an exact stitch count. You might not even put a single crochet into each of these bottoms of the stitches of the front panel, because again, it's hard to see your stitches and what you're doing. So don't stress out about it. If you are accidentally skipping a stitch and you don't realize it, it's going to be totally fine. I promise. Just single crochet along the bottom using the same method of knowing that if you have too many single crochet, if your stuff starts to get wavy, and too little if it starts to get too tight. So we're just going to put a nice edge along the bottom, working through the front panel and the pocket panel across the bottom of the back panel, as well as the second front panel on the other side. Once you reach the other corner, you can just fasten off. Now that we have the edging and border done, we're just going to add in 1 little single crochet row at the top of the pocket opening here with color B. I just think it looks so cute with this little white trim. So we're just going to take color B, slip stitch to join into the corner of the pocket. We have our cardigan right side out, and then we're just going to single crochet across. So you're going to try and put your hook into each of those stitches that we skipped previously when we were making that pocket opening. So you should easily be able to locate those single crochet stitches and just work your stitches with yarn B all the way to the other side. When you get to the other side, you can just slip stitch to join and fasten off, and then repeat the same thing on your second pocket opening. Once you're done with that, all we have to do is weave in any remaining ends that we have, and that is it for this design, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this cardigan as much as I do. I know it's a bit more advanced with the fuzzy yarn, but I just love the outcome of it. I will see you guys in the next video tutorial.